If you want to get promoted at work and it's just not happening, that can be so frustrating. And you are really working hard to be great at what you do. You're working on your projects. You're putting in extra time. You are bringing all of your excellence to the technical aspects of your job, and it's still not happening. And you wonder, why is it? What is it that I need to do differently? You've even shared with your boss that this is your goal, that you want to be moving to the next level, and it just doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. When I talk with managers in leading companies around the world, and we talk about what they find promotable and what they find is not promotable, there's three themes that come up that I see over and over again that people who want to get to that next level, whether it's a level of management or a level being a director, being a VP, that people don't think about. Let's look at each one of those three. First, one issue with people not getting promoted at work is because they're coming across like a worker and not like an improver. You want to, yes, do your work. You want to do your job and you want to do it to the utmost. You want to do it with excellence. It's simply that if all you're doing is just getting the job done and you are not going to the extra step of saying, not just how can I get it done, but how can I improve it? Or how can I make this particular project or how we approach it better? If you're not always looking at how can I improve things, then you're probably going to stay in your current role because you're not being perceived as someone at that next level, because it's typically the people at the next level who are driving and directing the business. And if you're not thinking that way and contributing in that way, they're not necessarily going to see you in that way. So three things you specifically want to do is you want to start thinking differently. Number one, you want to think like an improver. You want to think, okay, yes, I'm doing my job here. Now, how can I improve it? How can I come up with a way that it can be done better? Or what am I seeing that is something we're not doing in the department that we should be doing? How can I think more in an improvement sort of way? Secondly, you do want to act differently. You want to think to yourself, okay, so what am I doing actually that is in my role that would help me to be more of an improver around here? Am I giving myself a few minutes each day or giving myself 30 minutes each week to do some brainstorming around what I could do to improve things or what I could recommend to improve things around here? And third, you want to talk different. When you're in meetings with your boss, you don't just want to report in on, hey, here's what I've done, and okay, we're done, and we know what I'm going to work on next week, and there we go. No, you want to be talking certainly about those things, but you want to be talking about that next level, that improvement level. You want to be at least asking questions about, hey, so what are you seeing as some of the growth or some of the development or the next steps of the department? How can I assist with that? You want to come up with ideas and talk about those ideas so that you can demonstrate to your leadership that, yeah, you are a worker. You're a great worker. And you're so much more than that. You're part of the leadership team. You're an improver. Second, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they want to grow in their career is that they are a loner and not a connector. If you're a loner, you're just kind of doing things on your own. You're really focused on your job and doing it well. And that's it. As opposed to being a connector is certainly focusing on doing your job well, but in addition to that, you're really focused on your relationships and growing and strengthening your relationships. Relationships are a huge part of your career, and they're a huge part of your career advancement. And truly, they're a big part of just being human. And so developing your relationships at work and strengthening your relationships is only going to be good and healthy for you, humanly speaking, but it's also going to be very helpful for you in your career. So two areas you want to look at is what's happening with your current relationships with your boss, with your direct reports if you are a leader, with your peers? How are you doing with your current relationships? And maybe you know that someone works in the office or the cubicle or wherever next to you, but do you know what they like to do outside of work? Like, to what extent have you nurtured those relationships? You know they have two dogs. Do you know the dogs' names? To what extent have you asked questions about them? And those are personal examples, but it can be work examples as well, that you're really focused on developing those and strengthening those existing relationships. And secondly, you want to think about what are the relationships you don't have that you should have. How much time have you spent with your boss's boss? Or to what extent have you sought out your boss's boss's boss? Not to inappropriately go around people, but to form relationships throughout the organization, and certainly with people in some of those decision-making roles. And so is it time to seek out someone who could be strategic for you, strategic relationship in terms of your growth, your ongoing growth at the organization? Third, if you want to get promoted at work and you are coming across as someone who is a reporter instead of an influencer, then you're in trouble. And by reporter, I mean you show up in meetings, you show up in conversations, and you report information as opposed to influence people. Reporting information, it's important. You've got to catch people up to speed on what's happening with the project or what's happening with a customer or with something that you're working on together and you're part of it. But it's just that if that's all you're doing, then that's not really a promotable activity and a promotable skill. What's really a promotable skill is being influential, being able to influence other people. So in those one-on-one conversations with a colleague, with your boss, in a meeting with your whole team, when you speak up, are you speaking up like a reporter, just reporting information, or are you speaking up influentially? And 3 ways to do this. Number 1, when you speak up, you always want to relate what you have to share to them and to their concerns, to what part of it is relevant to them. Tie it to what they care about. Secondly, you want to think about always organizing what you have to say. Anything you have to say, organizing it with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So there's some kind of structure. And third, you want to practice it. If you're not in the habit of doing this, about really structuring those messages and relating what you say to what they care about, verbally doing that, then you got to really put your messages together and you got to practice them before you show up in that conversation or in that meeting. So if you're not getting promoted, take a look at these 3 areas. Are you coming across like a worker or like an improver? Secondly, are you coming across like a loner or a connector? And third, are you coming off like a reporter or an influencer? Take a look at those 3, bring up your skills in those 3 areas, and put yourself further on the road towards being closer to your next promotion.